Scott, you know that guy that's always bandaging up his knees and he's about to leg press after squatting and it's been like an hour because it'd take him forever to squat set up.
Yeah.
And you're like already on your 15th set of like belt squats or something. Your quads are cooked and he's like, just getting to leg press. What is it that we're here for?
What are you doing?
Are you trying to get jacked in a decent amount of time, or are you trying to see how injured you can make your back while quote unquote squatting, because the squat's such a bad matchup for your biomechanics that it barely hits your quads at all? But you heard you gotta squat first, heavy first, and you're doing it religiously, so you're not leaving anything on the table. That's not a good thing. Hey folks, Dr. Mike here for RP Strength, and you might have heard before that doing compounds first before isolations in your lifting is better for results. But is that true? Let's find out. So you probably heard before things like you got to do squats before leg extensions or leg presses. Compound movement, multi-joint first, isolation later. You got to do pull-ups before straight arm lat pull downs. You got to do dips before you do tricep push downs. No doubt many of you have heard this a ton. But is this practice worthwhile? We have 4 questions to answer today, and we'll answer all 4 of them. Question number 1 is, why is this advice given out? Like, why do people say this kind of stuff? Is there any merit to it? Question number 2, how and in what circumstances can this advice of compounds before isolations be true? Question number 3, how can this advice misapplied lead you astray? Is it ever not true, and why? And then lastly, number 4, a very super quick guide to making the best exercise selection choices in strength, physique, and general lifting for overall physique and health outcomes. Let's talk about it. So number 1, why is this advice given out? One reason is that it started being given out a long time ago, and so many people said it that everyone just kind of assumed it was received wisdom. Like, well, this is just what you do. And most people just don't question it. But that doesn't mean it's completely baseless. In fact, it's based on a few really, really good ideas. If this advice is a good idea, it is a good idea for a few different reasons. It is correct if you want to lift as much weight and as many reps with that weight in a compound movement as possible. So if you do isolations first, you limit your performance on the compound. Either you have to lift less weight and the same reps, or you can lift the same weight, but you have to get fewer reps. If you need to demonstrate and train maximum coordination and speed and athleticism during a lift, it had better be compound, and it had better be early or first in the workout. We'll talk about why in just a second. And if you are trying to train athletes to be better at sports with weights, or you're trying to do overall strength training, making a person stronger, then this advice of compounds first, isolations later is generally really good advice. Specifically, here's how the logic works. If you are trying to get as strong as possible overall, compound movements are king. Multiple muscles are used at the same time, just like in real-world strength feats. In real-world strength, you generally try to summon a lot of muscle to do a specific task, like pushing or pulling or lifting something. One muscle at a time is kind of weird strength training, and so compounds win because you can use more weight, because it's more real-world for strength, because it transfers better to all kinds of other movement performance, and because you're using multiple muscles and joints, summing up how much force you're producing total, which means you're actually just stronger the more compound an exercise is. You can deadlift a whole lot more than you can curl. So if you're trying to get as strong as possible overall, compounds really are king. If you see someone who's like, I'm in the gym for strength, and they're just one arm curling all the time, you're like, what the f*** are you doing? If they're doing close grip benches, that makes a lot more sense. Now, if you are trying to get stronger on a specific compound lift, like I'm trying to get my squat going or my deadlift or my bench press or my overhead press or my pull-ups, the ability to have much of your training for that lift get you maximum weight and maximum reps for whatever target range of weight and reps you're doing is critical. That's going to make you stronger. Let me put this into perspective. If you are trying to squat 315 pounds, 3 plates on a side for the first time in your life, and you are trying to do 225 pounds for reps after leg presses, after leg extensions, you're just not getting anywhere close to the amount of weight on your back, 315, that you would need to in order to train the balance and coordination at such heavy loads, the integration of muscles at such heavy loads, the nervous system at such heavy loads. You would be much better off training something like 275 to 300 pounds, 4 reps, but for that you would have to be fresh. So if you're very serious about squatting 315 pounds for a single, I want to see you hit 250, 275, 300 pounds for reps fresh. That's a much better way of training to squat 315 than if you do all your squats the same way, but tired after isolations, and it's 225 on the bar, it's 195 pounds on the bar, it's 205 on the bar. There's going to be some transfer. It's going to still make you stronger, but not as much as doing it fresh. So if your goal is strength, maximum strength improvement, yeah, you got to do compounds, the ones you're being tested on, fresh as much as possible. If you do isolations first, both your maximum reps and or your weight are impossible, and thus compounds first are a great idea for maximum strength overall and for specific compound lifts. So most overall maximum strength, you want compounds first. And if you really care about increasing your bench press, you should be doing a lot of lifting where bench press is first. Facts. Now, for athletic coordination, using lifting to make athletes stronger at sports. If, for example, you're using squats for improving your jump height, isolations slow you down. After you've fatigued yourself with isolations, you're slower on the compound lifts. Your rate of force development is lower. And the way you're activating your body to jump or to push or to pull has to take into account that one of the muscles, let's say your quads from leg extensions, is now fatigued. That changes the nervous system's way of activating all the muscles to get you to jump or to get you to push a sled as hard as possible for sports stuff. Thus, it's teaching you with a body that's kind of weirdly tired in one way. And so the amount of transfer of training you would get from doing after isolations squat jumps versus fresh squat jumps is just much lower. And so if you're interested in maximum carryover of athletic performance, compounds are a really big deal first, not second, not third. So you're keeping your isolations to the end if you're training for strength. If you're training for specifically some strength on a lift, compounds first is really good. And then also if you're training for athletic performance. And so for now, man, it sure shit seems like compounds before isolations is kind of a really good thing. However, this is where we get to point number 3, how the advice of always do compounds before isolations can lead you astray. In physique training to get jacked, there are 2 main kings, 2 variables you have to attend to get your best results: specificity and SFR, stimulus to fatigue ratio. Specificity just basically means targeting specific muscles with the most stimulus that they can grow. Like if you need bigger biceps, you should be training your biceps a lot. Are compound lifts the best for biceps? Some might be pretty good, but maybe there's not the direct answer to that question. Specificity matters. And stimulus to fatigue ratio means maximizing how much growth stimulus you get, how much the muscles will grow after training, but minimizing things like joint and connective tissue stress and psychological disruption and axial back fatigue and all this other stuff. So keeping your fatigue lower, but your stimulus higher. If in hypertrophy training, we can get excellent specificity and the highest stimulus to fatigue ratios possible, we don't care if it's isolations first or compounds first that let us do that. And if it happens to be isolations first that let us maximize specificity and maximize stimulus to fatigue ratio, like get a lot out of the exercise by paying a small fatigue cost, then that's the correct way to do it. And the rule of compounds first before isolations no longer applies for us. Now, sometimes for physique training, compounds first is great advice, especially when the compound is limited by the target muscle and has a great stimulus to fatigue ratio. For example, if you're doing incline dumbbell presses, that's a compound movement. Let's say you're doing it first. If incline dumbbell presses fail because of your chest and stimulate your chest like crazy, and they don't really beat up your shoulders and elbows much, you love the exercise, it's not super fatiguing, that means it's amazing on specificity, amazing on stimulus to fatigue ratio, and then you can absolutely do it first. Compounds before isolations. Later, maybe you'll do some flies. So in that case, that's totally cool. Now, This also has benefits because luckily you have a good stimulus to fatigue ratio specific exercise as a compound. That means it's going to come in and bring high muscle activity like compounds can do because of their stability and the weight used. Your faster twitch motor units are going to turn on because of the stability and the heavy weight. And that's going to be really, really good stuff. But if your compound exercise of choice is limited by other muscles than the ones you're targeting for growth from that compound exercise, and if its stimulus to fatigue ratio fresh and raw and heavy isn't ideal, then isolation first can be better. For example, if your lower back is the limiting factor in your barbell squat and you're strong enough that you're squatting a lot, and those heavy squats are really starting to beat you up. They take a toll from your lower back, from your hips, from your knees. Systemically, they make you get crazy out of breath. The super crushing weight psychologically drains you. And even if squats don't beat you up a ton, but like they beat you up some, and they're already kind of kicking the dead horse that is your body because you've done deadlifts earlier in the week and overhead presses and rows, and now your entire core, your back, your posterior chain is so fried that like heavy squats on top of that is just like, oh man, I'm never going to recover from next week. If that's the thing, doing leg extensions or leg presses, isolation stuff, first before squats can help. How? The leg extensions or leg presses maximize specificity in the quads by directly training quads when they're fresh. No debate, right? Leg extensions is just quads. Leg presses, it's mostly quads. And what they do is so the stimulus there is already really good and the specificity is amazing. Then you move on to doing squats afterwards. Remember now that your quads are super pre-exhausted from either tons of extensions or tons of presses. When you're doing your squats, you're using either less weight or doing fewer reps. But since rep ranges are kind of independently fixed, we want to target whatever rep range we want to target anyway, we have to dial the weight down. So instead of squatting 3 plates on a side, maybe it's 2 plates and some change. Now, when you squat that weight, it's going to have this huge impact of being even more specific to your quads. Because remember how your lower back used to give out beforehand. Well, now your lower back's fresh. It's got reps in the tank, but your quads are damn near close to failure as soon as you do rep number 1. So after 6 or 7 reps of squats, even with 225, your lower back might be completely like, dude, this is easy. I do 315 for 5 or 6 reps, no problem. But your quads, because of the 80 reps of extensions or presses you did before that, summing up, are really cooking, which means now the specificity of the squat is higher for your quads. Incredible. That's amazing. Now, in this instant, for the squat as the exercise, the raw stimulus magnitude, how much hypertrophy stimulus the squat actually gives you, just the squat by itself as an exercise, is going to be lower than if you did it fresh. Of course it will be. If you did squat fresh, you might be able to do a couple of sets of 8 with 315. I mean, that's one hell of a stimulus. A couple of sets of 8 reps with 225, if you do squats after 5 sets of leg presses, let's say. I mean, just the squats alone, the raw stimulus is not nearly as high. But how could it be if you're doing like a plate less on the side for the same sets and reps? No way, right? However, the lower weight and or lower reps in the squat done post-isolation means much lower fatigue. Because 225 for sets of 8 does not beat up your body remotely like 315 for sets of 8 does. Not even close. And tiny bonus here, it is a smaller acute injury risk as well. Like if you were going to snap your shit up with 315 for reps, you probably won't snap it up for 225 for reps. So the stimulus to fatigue ratio of doing squats after isolations is probably higher than doing them fresh. The fatigue is way lower. The stimulus is lower too, but check this out. The stimulus is just a bit lower. The fatigue is substantially lower. That's a big deal. So the SFR of leg press before squat might be much higher than squat before leg press as a total sum of exercise. Squat and leg press in one, leg press then squat on the other. If it's leg press then squat, the stimulus to fatigue ratio is higher. If it's squat then leg press, the stimulus to fatigue ratio is lower, but the raw stimulus magnitude might be higher. So for example, if you do 4 sets of heavy squats and then 4 sets of lighter leg presses, you might stimulate more muscle growth than if you do 4 sets of lighter leg presses first and then 4 sets of heavier squats, but they have to be lighter because you're more tired now. The overall stimulus might be better from that compounds first, squat first exercise. Yes, that's absolutely true. However, the stimulus to fatigue ratio, because you have to lift so much less weight in the squat with your overall body and systemic fatigue paying the price in that condition of leg press first, then squat, whereas squat first, leg press second, you got to go max out on the weight. The fatigue is so much lower and the stimulus just a little bit lower that the stimulus to fatigue ratio, how much good you get for the cost you pay, is just much better. It's like if you pay $100 for a really good meal, big stimulus, but the fatigue, quote unquote, of paying a lot of money, that's a lot. It's $100. It's holy shit. Now, if you get a meal that's not as good as the $100 meal, but pretty damn good, 80-90% as good, but it costs $50, you're paying half the quote unquote fatigue cost for that meal, the money, but you're getting 80-90% of the benefit on taste and on food experience. In just the same way, that workout that you do isolations first, compounds second, may very well not be the $100 meal worth of fun, but it's $80-90 worth of fun. That's how much muscle growth stimulus you get out of it. And it might cause half of the fatigue because fatigue works on an exponential. And so if you're doing very close to your fresh 1 rep max, that's unbelievable amounts of fatigue per rep. If you go to 315, which you can do, let's say for sets of 8, that's still a shitload of fatigue, though way less than if you did 365 or 1 rep max or something. When you go down to 225, the amount of fatigue that is on your back, shoulders, everything is just way, 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 way smaller. So you could have literally half, however you measure it, of the systemic joint connective tissue fatigue and injury risk from doing squats after leg presses than before, and 80 or 90% of the same raw stimulus magnitude. You say, hold on, Dr. Mike, that doesn't make any goddamn sense. I'm in the gym to grow as much muscle as possible. So why would I settle for less fatigue? What's the benefit of less fatigue if I'm trading off 10 or 20% of my growth? Well, hold on a second. You just take an extra leg press set or an extra squat set and you tack it on and you get 55% of the fatigue and 100% of the stimulus compared to that other workout of squats first, leg press second, where you'll do maybe 1 or 2 fewer sets, but you get double damn near the fatigue and right around the same amount of stimulus. Stimulus to fatigue is so important because if you find a good stimulus to fatigue setup, for example, leg press then squat versus the other way around, you can just crank the juice on it a little bit, just do a few more sets, and you get this crazy just machine that doles out stimulus at very low levels of fatigue. That's a big deal. So if you're always sticking to compound lifts before isolations, you risk having needlessly low stimulus to fatigue ratio. You're that guy, Scott, you know that guy that's always bandaging up his knees and he's about to leg press after squatting and it's been like an hour because it'd take him forever to squat, set up. Yeah. And you're like already on your 15th set of like belt squats or something. Your quads are cooked and he's like, just getting to leg press.
Yeah, they're like, my God, dude.
What is it that we're here for?
What are you doing?
Are you trying to get jacked in a decent amount of time, or are you trying to see how injured you can make your back while quote unquote squatting, because the squat's such a bad matchup for your biomechanics that it barely hits your quads at all? But you've heard you got to squat first, heavy first, and you heard compounds first, and you're doing it religiously, so you're not leaving anything on the table. That's not a good thing. You risk having needlessly low stimulus to fatigue ratio and trouble specifically targeting a certain muscle like your quadriceps or your triceps or your lats or whatever you're ready to hit. If your goal is targeted, maximally effective muscle growth training, then it doesn't matter if it's isolation first or compound first. Both can be the correct answer. The true correct answer is which one is most specific, hitting the muscles you want the most, and which one of those gives you the best stimulus to fatigue ratio. Sometimes it's compounds first, sometimes it's isolations. It's just not a dependable rule in physique to do compounds first. So let's sum all of this up. For strength training, compounds first is usually the best for maximum tension, maximum training response, maximum gains in strength. If you're serious about training for strength, I had better not see you do 5 sets of leg extensions before you squat. That's backwards. For athletics, you need speed and athleticism and coordination and maximum force production. Compounds first, almost always in athletics. Big bonus. For physique, it depends on specificity and stimulus to fatigue ratio. Sometimes compounds first works. Sometimes it doesn't work as well as doing some more isolated work first. It's just not a dependable rule. But you can find out what hits you best, whatever gives you the best pumps, whatever gives you the best soreness, whatever gives you the best progression, and whatever feels easiest on your joints, easiest on your spinal cord, easiest on your psychology. That's the thing you're probably going to want to do because it's dependably going to make you more jacked over time. It's like a lot of IFBB pro bodybuilders do this. So if you see their workouts, a lot of times they'll do cable pushdowns, then they'll do some Smith machine skull crushers, then they'll do dips, and then they'll do close grip bench for triceps. And you're like, why didn't you start with close grip bench? Because if like Derek Lunsford started with close grip bench first, he would be doing close grips for sets of 12 with 405, and then his elbows would last a few weeks and then throw up 2 middle fingers and never show up to the party again. In the real world, as you get bigger and stronger, you got to sometimes be like, all right, isolations first here just so I can cook this muscle a bit without using very heavy weights and without having to use compounds for heavy weights and some combination of that and high reps to really cook my central nervous system, my peripheral nervous system, my cardio, etc. At some point, compounds first are not the good answer, but sometimes they are. And I'll end this on a funny note. Well, to me, funny. We'll find out if we have a similar sense of humor in mere seconds. For general physique, overall looking sexy, looking your best, being healthy, and especially if you're time constrained, you train a couple times a week, 20 to 40 minutes each time, rapid fire exercises. My best advice to you is use only compounds if you can do it. A couple isolations here is totally fine, but the problem with isolations is for any one unit of time, one rep, you train one muscle. Biceps, 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 biceps. If you're doing underhand pull downs, you train biceps and rear delts and back, all in each rep. The amount of time efficiency is like multiples higher than doing isolation. So if you want a great routine to save time and to get the best shape that you can in just maybe an hour or two total of working out per week, almost everything, if not everything, should be a compound. Minimum rest for high reps between compounds, alternate compounds, something that pushes, something that pulls, so on and so forth. That's how you build the best plan for general fitness. So this whole compounds first isolation thing for general fitness, it's almost always just compounds. We don't have anything wrong with compounds, but in advanced hypertrophy training, sometimes an isolation first is best when it maximizes specificity and it really maximizes stimulus to fatigue ratio because it makes a really heavy, brutal compound no longer as heavy, no longer brutal, and almost as effective, but much less fatiguing. If you guys want this kind of programming to be done for you, you customize, the AI helps, and then you execute the plan after that. The RP Hypertrophy app exists. There are links to it right in the description below. Go get it. It's going to be awesome. You're going to get so jacked that you'll have a hard time understanding how you ever lived life smaller. And that's on you and your psychotherapist to deal with. Folks, I've been Dr. Mike, and I'll see you next time.